Hello friends, welcome once again. It's Friday lunchtime, we're here at Archant Towers and it's time for another slice of Ipswich Town talk. My name is Mark Heath, I'm the sports editor here, but really I'm just here to ask questions of the boys that actually know what's going on. So we've got Stuart Watson, back from holiday. Stu, good to have you back, Chief Football Writer.
Thank you.
Good
Hi,
time?
Stu. Alright.
Good to have you back, mate, good to have you back. It's not a lot going on, so fortunately it's quite a quiet period. And Andy Warren, an ever present. How are you, Andy?
Well, kind of ever present.
Getting a bit more sleep these
Nope.
days? No more sleep?
No. Why sleep when there's an Ipswich Town manager to appoint?
Quite so. Now, obviously, we've got to start today with some breaking news, very excitingly. Woo-hoo! Nice. Nice buzzer. Breaking news, literally just before we came in here, Jack Ross has been appointed as a manager of Sunderland. News that we were expecting, of course, from the middle of this week. But, Stu, it's just been confirmed, Ross is the new man at Sunderland. Town will not be having Jack Ross as a manager.
Yeah, I think it's been on the cards, hasn't it, for the last 24, 48 hours. It's been pretty clear, I think, Friday afternoon that the speculation started that he was heading to Sunderland. Now, the interesting part is that the new Sunderland owner has come out and said that they've beaten competition from clubs in a higher division, and Ross has turned down more lucrative offers from, I think, clubs plural, was it? In the
clubs.
statement?
That was the interesting bit to me.
In a higher division, which has obviously led to speculation that he's turned down Ipswich to go to Sunderland. That's not quite our understanding of it, is it, Andy?
No.
From what we gather, we've spoken to insiders at Ipswich, we've spoken to people close to Jack Ross, and I think our understanding of it is he had a couple of interviews at Ipswich, very much impressed Marcus Evans, but the plan was always for Evans to wait and speak to Paul Hurst after the League One player final on Sunday, and Ross, understandably, an offer comes along from Sunderland. He's not going to wait around all day to see if Ipswich offer him the job. There was a concrete offer there and he's gone for it.
Okay, we'll come to that in a minute. Just to, obviously, first of all, to say that the most important thing is that you get involved with this. We're here for kind of take your questions and thoughts. We've got a few coming in early doors. We'll get to them in a minute. But George and Peter, thanks very much for getting involved. We'll come to those questions in a minute. Just turning into Andy Warren now. So
Mark
Jack
Heath.
Ross, how are you?
Yeah, very good.
Good. So Jack Ross won't be the manager.
No.
Which means Paul Hurst will be the manager, doesn't it?
Well, it's looking that way. I think Ipswich are hopeful of Paul Hurst being their new manager, but the timeline remains the same. He's got a big game Sunday at Wembley, trying to get into the Championship one way or another, and Ipswich will wait until after that, and then presumably early next week make a move. I think our understanding of it is that they're along the line. There's through third parties probably there's some kind of assurance being given that he is at least interested in the Ipswich Town manager's job. But Ipswich aren't naive enough to be here on Friday the 25th of May thinking that we'll speak to Paul Hurst in 2 days, and I think there's an assurance there that he would at least seriously entertain an offer.
And just I don't know if you can even give an insight, but how does that kind of thing work? I mean, obviously Town can't officially talk to him, can they, until after the game? But
no.
obviously, as you say, there would have been feelers put out.
Yeah. The Town, no, they can't officially talk to them until they've asked for permission to talk to them. We've heard a lot about official permissions this week. St Mirren and Sunderland doing a little merry dance around all of that, and we reported 2.5 weeks ago that Ipswich had made an official approach to speak to St Mirren boss Jack Ross. That's how it works. You make an official approach.
Good work.
Yeah, they played it by the book with Jack Ross, didn't they? They went and asked for formal permission and then subsequently spoke to Jack Ross. Obviously, the Sunderland situation now, there was accusations of skullduggery a little bit at one stage. The Ross to Sunderland talk began before St Mirren had an approach, which subsequently came, and I think there's been a bit of negotiations about the compensation fee subsequently because of that. But from what I gather, Ipswich have wanted to do things by the book with Paul Hurst. They've been very respectful of the fact that he's very much entrenched in a League One promotion push at the moment. But as Andy says, they're not stupid or naive enough to just suddenly wait till Monday and pick up the phone. They've been using third parties to quietly sound out a number of people, dozens of people, where you get agents just ringing other agents, just saying, if they were to make an approach in a few weeks, would you be interested? So there'll be a little bit of groundwork there done, but they're going through the right channels.
Shrewsbury, interestingly, the Shrewsbury chief executive, this is when this all started. He talked about the interest from Ipswich in Paul Hurst, and he spoke about how he's not surprised and that he hopes Paul gets the right job for him down the line. Whether promotion to the Championship complicates their view on whether they want to give Ipswich permission to approach him, who knows? But I think Shrewsbury playing ball in all of this as well.
So Jack Ross, as we say, definitely won't be Ipswich Town manager. It remains to be seen if Paul Hurst will be the Ipswich Town manager, and certainly looking at some of these comments coming in. Peter John says, good luck to Jack Ross. I think he might need it at Sunderland. Obviously,
He's got to succeed straight away, isn't he?
He has, pretty much, hasn't he?
You've got to go in there and you've got to be in the promotion mix from the word go.
He'll be expected to win the league next season, won't he?
Basically, yeah, you'd think so.
At a club like Sunderland in League One. So Peter says, let's move on to go and get Paul Hurst in ASAP. I'm sure that seems to be the way we're going. Peter, George Huggins, hi George, I know you're a regular commenter, good to have you on board again. Paul Hurst, he'll be great and can embed the youngsters as part of Evans' 5-year plan. That's certainly a key part of whoever comes in will be expected to work with that 5-point plan. It's a good question from Frankie Weaver, and something you touched on today in the paper, Stewie. If we now miss out on another target in Hurst, the Derby vacancy is out there. Let's be frank about that. Where do we go from there? Now, certainly, obviously, we understand that Paul Hurst is very much the number one target and has been for quite some time. But there are plans behind the scenes, aren't there, for other guys who they can line up if, for whatever reason, Hurst doesn't work out. Yeah,
they've done huge due diligence on this, and they're not suddenly, it's not going to suddenly be a mad scramble if Hurst doesn't come off. I don't think Hurst is one of the contenders for Derby as we stand.
It's Lampard, isn't it?
It's looking like Frank Lampard at the moment, if not someone like Paul Simpson or Darren Vassell. So I'm not unduly concerned that it's not going to be Hurst, but there have been other interviewees. Lampard, we know, has had 2 interviews and impressed. I still don't think that option's fully off the table. I know there's been reports of them being too far apart in negotiations, but Scott Parker as well has had an interview and from what we understand did quite well as well. But even as recently as the last fortnight, we know that these third parties, agents and whoever else, have been quietly sounding out a number of candidates still. People like Stein and some of the lower league managers like Jones and Tisdale and Appleton, the assistant manager at Leicester, and Clark at Bristol Rovers. So they would be ready to move on to options C, D, E, F and beyond if need be, but I don't think it's going to come to
we understand that's actually quite recent, don't we, the sounding out? I mean, in terms of, we're talking the last couple of weeks, are we, with those guys?
Yeah.
And Maurice Stein obviously actually won by a landslide, I think it was, wasn't it? Our poll we had back at the start of the manager search, we had more than 5,500 votes, and Maurice Stein won that quite clearly, didn't he? So let us know if you would still like to see Maurice sweep into Portman Road, whether Hurst is the man for you or indeed anyone else. What obviously we talked a lot about Paul Hurst, Andy. What do we actually know about him? We know he's fairly diminutive of stature. That's what I know.
Good news for me. He's shorter than me, and I've never.
You'll be looking down on him.
Yeah. Which is unusual for a football manager. But
what's his background?
He's come through non-league, through Ilkeston and Boston before first big job at Grimsby, who had serial promotion contenders in the National League. What was the conference? 2 playoff final, 2 playoff semi-final losses, 1 playoff final victory. Got them into League 2, scoring a lot of goals in the process, and then took on a Shrewsbury team struggling in League 1, saved them from relegation, and now here they are. Here they are at Wembley. So it's quite a turnaround, quite a rapid rise for someone who's clearly impressing. He's got his way of doing things, his way of approaching the game, and he sticks to it, and it's working for him. He's a man on the up.
And you were saying earlier, Stu, as well, he's done that job of galvanising support, hasn't he, and kind of a good feeling around the team, which obviously is tick number 1 on the Ipswich Town.
Ticks a lot of boxes. I mean, the number 1 box he ticks is, I think, he develops players from lower level, which is a big part of what Marcus Evans is looking for. We know the budget is not going to suddenly change. They are going to be working on a shoestring budget, the new manager. You look at Hurst, he's gone into Shrewsbury and he signed players that he knows from non-league. A lot of them have been players that he's worked with at Grimsby before, and others that have had really sort of eclectic careers in the lower leagues, and he's trusted them to make the step up, and they've certainly done that. So getting the best out of what he's got, I think, will be one of the biggest ticks for Marcus Evans. The youth team record, rather than homegrown players within the club, I think he's loaned in good players. He's got a couple of young lads on loan from Norwich at the moment, the goalkeeper as well from Manchester United. So it looks like it's a fair mix of experience and youth in his squad. But I would say the biggest tick for Marcus Evans will be developing players and also the brand of football seems to be positive. Let's not say free flowing and possession based, but it's front foot from what we gather. It's 4-3-3, and they give it a go, and he's bold with his substitutions. He makes early substitutions, and he looks to win football matches.
Sounds perfect. I'm excited. I don't know about you. Get back to some questions. Neil Perkins says, why would Hurst come to us if the Shrews go up? I think, without meaning to be too offensive to Shrewsbury, even if he does take Shrewsbury up, you're probably only ever looking at fighting to stay in the Championship, aren't you, as opposed to potentially challenging for.
I think then winning the game on Sunday is probably an added complication in his mind. It will be, an added thought process. But yeah, let's be honest, Shrewsbury will be coming into the Championship very much on a lower end of League One budget still.
Smaller than Burton. It will be the lowest budget in Championship history.
Yeah, and that brings with it its limitations. And don't underestimate the Ipswich job. It's a massive, massive job for someone. For a football manager who's working his way up the football pyramid, Paul Hurst would look at the Ipswich job. You'd look outside, there's statues of Sir Bobby Robson and Alf Ramsey. It's a massive job, a massive club, and a massive opportunity. And he's shown that he's happy to make these jumps before. He got Grimsby promoted, and within 3 months he had taken the job of a League One club that were in the relegation zone of League One because he saw it as a stepping stone for him. He's an ambitious man. It's a good job. He's a good manager. It seems to fit.
And I think managers are very aware now that you have to strike while your reputation is at its highest. You're only 6 months, a year away from being the next big thing to yesterday's man. So I think managers now, they see the short shelf life of managers and how quickly things can change, and you have to capitalise while you're on the up. And you pick your job wisely, and you keep that momentum going, and I think Ipswich would be a good progressive step for Paul Hurst.
I think we do tend to forget that, don't we? I mean, like you just said, that Ipswich is a very attractive job. In terms of, you've got a decent squad, haven't you, in terms of players coming back from injuries. You've got a fan base that's just waiting for something to latch onto.
Yeah,
you've got a very patient owner who's never really going to pull the trigger on you, no matter how bad things get. Obviously, Mick kind of almost talked himself out of town last season. So there's a lot of things there that will be very attractive to up-and-coming managers. And in terms of kind of managers from the past, I see Jackie Calver's talking about George Burley. Is George Burley still interested in the manager's job? Stewie, that's another one of your exclusives. I don't think that's really going to happen, is it? Was he interviewed, do we know?
No, he applied. No contact from Ipswich on that one, which surprises me slightly. I think he would have been worth listening to at the very least, just for diplomatic reasons, and a man who's given so much to the club as a legend, as a player, as a manager. He's been at all the home games. He's living in the town. You think they might have just had a little listen to what he had to say, but from what I gather, there was no contact and no reply to that application.
Okay, so do we know? And I'm asking now, I don't actually know off the top of my head. Do we know who was interviewed?
I don't know all of them.
No,
we think there were 8 or 9. We understand there were 8 or 9 interviewed, and a lot of them have been quite public, haven't they? In Ross, Lampard, Scott Parker, another one, Tim Sherwood. We know another was interviewed twice. We're not quite sure of his identity at this stage. It's like a police chase, this isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But yeah, we think 8 or 9, and that number of 8 or 9 might also include Paul Hurst as being obviously not interviewed, certainly not interviewed, but that 8 or 9 is kind of an extended shortlist, which he's obviously on.
And you say it is like a police chase. I don't mind sharing with you that these boys have been really working the phones, talking to people behind the scenes. Some of the texts I've seen on your phones, if we could share with you, fantastic.
Yeah, we can't.
Yeah, unfortunately we can't. So moving on.
It's a family show.
Yeah. Richard Bevan, sounds like the deal is done, but Evans being cagey because of manners. We've kind of already talked about that. Certainly there won't be any deal per se in place as yet, will there?
I wouldn't have thought.
No.
I wouldn't have thought so.
This is a good question from Harvey. Nice to have on board, Harvey. Welcome. Thank you for spending your Friday lunchtime with us. With Emmanuel impressing at Rotherham and Spence contracted, could we see Cotter in a different position next season? Obviously, Emmanuel's going to be playing in the League One playoff final against Paul Hurst Shrewsbury this weekend. He has talked before about being a centre-half midfield and would be a shame for him to be playing in the 23s all season. Cotter was certainly very impressive, wasn't he?
I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
The Ipswich Town right-back position. They haven't had one for so long. A proper right-back, nailed-on right-back, play every week, right-back. Mick seemingly couldn't decide between Iorfa and Spence last season, could he? That was mix and match. I'm really excited about these 2 young right-backs with someone like Jordan Spence, who's if not the highest level of right back, but a very consistent performer, an experienced guy. And then you've got these 2 young guys, Emmanuel and Costa, who love to get forward. I'm quite excited by them. I don't know if we can really talk about Cotter playing different positions though. I think he needs to work in the air, stuff in the air if he's going to play in the middle. By the sounds of it.
But certainly Emmanuel's been impressive, hasn't he, at Rotherham? He didn't play much to begin with. In fact, there was a lot more hype, wasn't there, about Kiefer Moore going, or certainly being at Rotherham. But it's turned out that Emmanuel has done really well there, hasn't
Young Player of the Year.
Absolutely, yeah.
Says it all, really.
Jenny GW, hi Jenny. I know you comment quite a lot on the EADT Sport Facebook page. Thanks for being with us. I heard McCarthy's coming back. I'm not sure about that, Jenny.
Is that breaking?
Yeah, I think that might be breaking news. I think that's fake news, as Mr. Trump would call it. So no, I can't see that, Jenny. Sorry to disappoint. I know you're a big fan of his. Louis Hunt Cole. Any idea who the other one interviewed for a second time was? We don't really, do we?
No, we can't really give any more information than that. But what I do gather is Scott Parker interviewed well, so whether he's come back, whether he was the man that came back for a second time, we can't say with any certainty. But from what I gather, both Lampard and Parker did impress.
Luke Penning, I'd love to have Stein in charge. He's been a fan of his team and the football even before Town's manager vacancy. Works well on a small budget and breeds through youngsters, which is what we want. What is the latest with Stein? Has he signed a new deal at Venlo, or is he still on the kind of free agent market, as it were?
The latest with Stein. Stein was one of these many managers who was subtly sounded out via third parties around about a fortnight ago. So somebody on behalf of Ipswich has contacted both Venlo and his agent just to say literally what are the terms of his contract, i.e. what's the compensation, what's he earning at the moment. But they'll have done that with loads of people, and they have done that with loads of people. We know that they've done that with a lot of people going back quite a long way, but there was no sort of follow-up on that, so I don't think he's anywhere high up in the running. He said that he's looking likely to stay at Venlo now. A couple of moves to Dutch clubs didn't quite come off. I think he was linked with like a Feyenoord coaching role recently. That didn't happen. A number of other Dutch clubs didn't happen, so I think he'll still be at Venlo.
Okay. Martin says Burley would be suited to a role within the club, Stuart. Obviously, you've already said that. There's no need for a romantic reunion as manager, though. Should we fail in our pursuit of Hurst, which hopefully, obviously, it won't, we should look to Nathan Jones or someone of that ilk. And I think, as you say, Stuart, those kind of names are in the background, aren't they?
I think with Jones, Jones was contacted quite early in this, but I think he's quite happy where he is.
Jenny back on again, says Stein's by far my favourite, so clearly there is still quite a lot of support there for Maurice Stein, a suave European coming into the club and shaking things up. I'd still quite like to see that, but I don't think it's going to happen. Peter John shudders at the thought, Jenny. I assume that's the Mick McCarthy ghost of Christmas past coming back. Jenny again says lol. Oh look, we're really entertaining Jenny. Look at this, 2 lols from Jenny. Thanks, and a smiley face. Loving that, Jenny. Thank you. Neville writes, still no news on McGoldrick. Good question. Now obviously the problem is
that's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah. The problem is with no manager, who's making decisions on players who are out of? Is it Clewy? I mean, obviously McGoldrick has no.
Well, I don't think anybody's making decisions on those players. I think the decision is whether to give them a new one. Their contract's expiring. There's no one to give them a new one.
So as it stands, McGoldrick's basically free to find another club, isn't he? I think.
As of I think Ipswich contracts end at the end of May. I think.
They had negotiations with McGoldrick. I think they did try and talk to him about a new deal. From what I gather, he's ready for a new challenge, and you can understand it from both parties' point of view. From Ipswich's point of view, he's had his injuries. He'll be one of the higher earners, and Ipswich might be thinking that chunk of the wage bill might be better spread elsewhere. McGoldrick might be looking for his last big contract. At the age of 30 plus now, he'll be looking for a big 3-year deal elsewhere. So I think he'll be moving on. In terms of who's been making the decisions, it's been a bit of a combination factor of McCarthy gave his recommendations to Evans before he left. Clew has also added his sort of 2 penneth, and that's how they've come to the decisions regarding letting go the likes of Hyam and some of the younger players and all the rest of it. But to be honest, a lot of them weren't rocket science in terms of Luke Hyam. I thought he did quite well when he came back, but if you look at the number of central midfielders that he's up against next year with Dazelle and Downs and some of the younger ones, there's just a lot of traffic in his way. Same with Gleeson. Carriol's injuries probably went against him. May yet return and get a chance to prove himself fitness wise, but a lot of them probably weren't two difficult decisions to come to.
McGoldrick, not too long ago, we were talking about a £7 million move to Leicester, weren't we?
I think this is the right fit. I think
seems a long time ago.
Though,
absolutely. But what do you think? Is McGoldrick? Is it right to let him go? Do you want to still see him at the club? Obviously, on his day, he's probably still one of the best players in the Championship. Unfortunately, his day is fairly few and far between these days with injuries and whatnot. Michael Bullard, are the squad still planning their annual trip to Ireland? And if so, what is the schedule? These boys want to know that just as much as you, Michael.
Yeah, we would like to put that in our diaries.
Indeed.
It doesn't. It was all planned, all booked.
It's booked. It's booked. It's paid for. But that was pre-Mick. I think they're reluctant to announce it yet, just in case a new manager wants to shake things up a little bit. So we wait and see whether that's going to happen.
Okay. Rebecca Smith, obviously just joined us from the planet Mars. Any idea who you reckon will be the manager? Rebecca, we've just been talking for quite a long time about Paul Hurst. That's probably who we think is going to be the manager. So if that changes, we'll let you know during the course of this chat. Jenny again back on saying, big fan of Stein. Is he still an option? Potentially, Jenny, if Hurst falls through, as we say. Lewis Hunt Cole back on. Talk of taking a different approach. Does that mean a shift to a director of football? Now, obviously, a young manager coming in, that would be something that we've seen done before at other clubs with a kind of more senior, experienced director of football. Is there any hint at all that might be?
Ipswich do have a director of football.
Which this is awkward.
Which is, I don't think it is. It's often kind of, it's a job title that doesn't mean the same at Ipswich that it has at other clubs. Dave Bowman is the director of football.
That is his title, but he essentially is chief scout. I think that was a bit of a get around in terms of when Mick brought him across. They already had a chief scout in McCall, I think it would have been at the time. So he's not a director of football in the traditional sense, although he was and still is very much high up in, I think he was the link between Evans and McCarthy at times, and Dave's still at Ipswich, but it's looking almost certain that he will follow Mick to wherever he ends up, Mick and TC, because those three have been a trio
or a team
throughout their career. So there'll be a few holes to plug in terms of staff-wise. Dave Bowman, so you'll be after a new chief scout, a new goalkeeping coach with Mally Webster retiring, and the fitness coach Andy Liddell moving on. So there's a little bit of latitude for the new man to bring in some of his own staff, but by and large they'll be expected to work within the structure that's there with your Brian Clues and Gerard Nashes and Chris Hoggs and all the rest of them.
Big old framework within the academy to pick on, isn't there? So there's staff there.
Jack Phillips, Mark Warburton, any chance he's been interviewed? Obviously he was one of the names on the early list, kind of middling to kind of...
No, don't think he was contacted, which surprised me a little bit, but I think it's become clear that the younger manager was the way they were going, and maybe he was viewed in an older bracket. I would, if I was arguing Mark's corner, I'd argue he was perhaps a bit of a hybrid manager, for want of a better word, but no contact there, it seems.
Do you want to run through the list of people of no contact?
Should we do it?
How long is it though?
Should we do one each, Stu? I'll start. Warburton,
Coleman,
McLaren,
Pardew,
Cucci,
Unsworth,
Gary White.
Gary White didn't get the
shame,
call,
Gary.
did he?
Such a shame. It could have been really good.
Burley we've said about, so all of those people, no contact from what we gather. So I think Evans very early in the process realised that he wanted to go for this young up and coming manager that was going to get people excited again.
So is Gary White though, he's young and up and coming, isn't it? Anyway, Jackie Calvert, any news on the Bart signing? The question we get every week. Still, I don't think, Jackie, there's been no movement again.
Sure, it's still the same. He's busy, isn't he, Bart?
Yeah, he's with Poland at the moment. Hopefully
he signed this 1 year, 12-month extension. So worst comes to worst, he will be an Ipswich Town player next year. But negotiations about something a bit longer are ongoing. I'm sure he's now waiting till the World Cup's out the way and a new manager's in place before that continues. Kevin
Wagstaff, love to see Frank Lampard with Uncle Harry helping out in some capacity. Obviously, we've talked about Frank already. Kevin, we think although he's still maybe in the mix at Town, we think that's unlikely. And
odds on for Derby.
And for me, someone coming from Derby, that's a very Derby County appointment. Let me tell you. So
is that a good thing?
I don't know. It could go one of two ways, couldn't it? I mean, obviously, he would get people excited. I think I said last week that the idea of Lampard at Town still revs my engine. It's a sexy appointment, isn't it? But
so sexy.
It's very sexy, but it could quickly turn ugly, unfortunately. Where are we now? Peter John, who would you all want as boss and why? I don't think, in terms of who we all want as boss, that's hard.
We're beyond that now.
I mean, it kind of looks like we know who is going to be the boss, and I think we all agreed that he'd be a good choice. Colin Knights, did Lampard say no because of available funds or the amount he would be paid? This is interesting. Now, of course, it was reported elsewhere that Lampard essentially turned Town down because of the pay and funds involved. We don't think that's the case, though, do we? Or do we?
I can't bring too much information to the table on this one. I've been on the chase for Lampard and people close to him, and not been able to get too much joy this week. So I can't honestly say what the situation was. All I can say is that he hasn't officially turned Ipswich down. He's not been offered the job and turned it down for whatever reason. But that's I think he's still potentially in play at the moment, but Derby is looking more likely for him.
Super. We've just been given a 5-minute warning, so we'll start wrapping up, getting through these questions. Clive Penning, Hurst name next week as it's Suffolk show. Imagine that. Paul Hurst on a Suffolk punch.
Unveiled on a horse at the Suffolk show.
That would be the way to go. So that's
or
obviously
a tractor. Just drives in on a tractor.
That's what's going to happen, Clive. You heard it here first. Fingers crossed. Stephen Fuchs, another interesting question we get quite a lot. I don't know if you've got any update on this, boys. From Stephen Fuchs, any news on the new kit, and will it be Adidas? Now, obviously, it's very, very late in terms of unveiling a kit this year, isn't it? Are we still expecting it in the next couple of weeks, or I mean, what's the latest on that?
Ian Milne said a few months back that it's likely to be Adidas again, but there's been a change of management at Adidas, and that's complicated the issue. But their contract with Adidas runs out this summer, but I get the sense that it still is going to be Adidas. But I was even asking about that yesterday and wasn't getting too much information. By the end of this month, so it's going to be, what are we now, the 25th, so hopefully in the next week or so.
So maybe Paul Hurst will be unveiled wearing the new kit on a Suffolk punch at the Suffolk show. That'd be fantastic.
Pulling a tractor.
See if we can do that. Stephen, I can tell you exclusively the kit will be blue and white though. That's a little exclusive for you. Nathan King, get Glenn Driver in. I'm a big fan of the boy Driver. He's worked wonders at Leiston, but I think even he would probably say it might be a bit too early in his managerial career, Nathan. But a good shout, maybe 10 years down the line. Ben Patterson, taking into consideration all the players coming back from injury and our current crop of talented youngsters coming through, how many players in what positions do you guys think are needed to make a strong top 6 push? Concise answers, please, boys.
2 wingers, centre-back and a striker.
Boom. There you go. Stewie, any advance?
Agreed.
Excellent. Rebecca Smith, if Hurst was to take Shrewsbury up, would he want to leave after promoting them? Again, I think we've already stressed.
I don't think it changes the situation whether they win or lose on Sunday.
He might be able to demand a few more G's in his pay packet if he comes with a promotion on his CV. Who knows?
Nathan's back on, so just saying no. I don't know what you're talking about, Nathan. I assume you're talking about Glenn Driver. I don't know. Apologies, maybe come back on. Jenny GW, gentlemen, everyone seems to have applied for the manager role. Did you put your own names forward?
Me and Stuart, we did actually.
Joint approach.
Didn't hear anything.
No contact.
That's an absolute disgrace. Neville Wright, whoever takes over, guys, where should we be? I think we've already touched on that, Neville. And I think we're now coming to the end. Jackie Calvert, if I applied for the job, would I have an interview, please? Unlikely, I think, Jackie. I don't know your.
I like Jackie though.
She's been a key contributor, hasn't she? Yeah. She's been woman of the match so far, Jackie. Peter John, breaking news: home shirt is blue and white. Yep, I think that will be the case. Chaps, we come to the end of the comments for the time being. Any other business? What's going on in your world? What are you going to be doing this weekend?
I am.
You're watching the League One playoff final.
Watching the League One playoff final on Sunday. Tomorrow, going to do a nice breakfast. Monday, go for a little walk probably.
Excellent. Stewie?
Need a new dishwasher as well.
Oh, Stewie, you're working Sunday, of course. You'll be in the office.
I'm working Sunday. I'm also learning to floss currently.
He's not talking about teeth there. I should just stress. We're talking about the dance, flossing. I think it's probably too early for Stu to unveil that.
I'm still on the dab.
And he's very much a dabber. In terms of what's coming up in print, tomorrow we've got a look at potential players that Paul Hurst might bring in if he were to become.
No, Paul Hurst's sort of best signings through his, I think, looking at Shrewsbury and Grimsby and a bit of background on those just to give a flavour of him.
That Mondays?
That's Monday, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Your job's to make lists.
Exactly, who would think I'm the sports editor, right? Useless.
Josh Emanuel interview tomorrow.
Josh Emanuel interview tomorrow, and then we've got to look at Hurst's potential signings for Monday and much more. Myself, I'll be watching UFC Liverpool because fight sports are the best sports around. I think we all agree. We've got an Ipswich Town fan actually fighting on the big event UFC Liverpool at the Liverpool Echo in front of 11,000 people. Arnold Allen looking to go 4-0 in the UFC. So back him. He's a tractor boy.
He wants
Maybe
to fight
one
over
day
there, doesn't he?
he does. Maybe one day fight at Portman Road, for the UFC featherweight title. Chaps, I think we've come to a natural end. Have you got anything more to add?
No.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for joining us once again, and we'll join you again soon.